Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Well, we're back once again at the corner of truth and courage. Thank you for joining us here today. I need to walk back something that I said earlier in the week. We want to be accurate here at Fortress of Faith. I go to great lengths to do that. I've been on the radio since 2011. Honestly, this is the second time. I can only remember one other time that I had to come on the radio and apologize and say, hey, I got something wrong. I'm not afraid to do that. I know I'm capable of making mistakes. The person who put an eraser at the end of the pencil knew what he was doing. We all make mistakes. And so when I do, I want to make sure you're aware of it. I mentioned to you about the election there in New York City with Zoran Mamdani being voted in, that 800,000 people who voted in the election there were non-citizens. Let me tell you where that came from. It actually came from the New York Times, and it came from the NPR and the New York City Council. I have these articles in my files. Last year, they voted. The city council voted to allow non-citizens to vote in their elections. They said, well, they're paying taxes here. They should have rights to be able to vote who's their mayor and who's their city councilors and so on there. I knew about that. And so when I said that Mamdani was voted in, largely was because of these non-citizens voting in the election. That was what was coming. However, I did not know that the courts had overturned what New York City had voted on to do. So I stand corrected. I want to say thank you to one of our listeners who brought that to my attention, and I appreciate that. And I know it goes to the credibility of what you hear here on Fortress of Faith. And we try to do our very, very best to make sure we're accurate in that. But thankfully, this effort by New York City to allow non-citizens to vote in their elections was overturned and stopped by the courts. I didn't know that had happened, but I'm happy to hear that it did. But it also throws a new wrinkle, a new thought that we should consider. Wow, New York, you really want a Muslim for your mayor? You really want a Marxist for your mayor? Really? I can understand non-citizens being beguiled, but has New York gone that far? Have they been beguiled? Yes, they have, apparently. It doesn't detract, even though I made that mistake earlier in the week, not knowing about the courts overturning of that, but it doesn't detract from the fact that America, we're in trouble when we're voting in people that have influences like Islam and Marxism. Is the perfect storm. I still stand by my remarks that if I could create the perfect villain in a novel and give him the mission to destroy America from within, that's his goal, I would influence him by making him a Muslim. I would give him that background to, and we've talked about why that would be a problem, and then also make him a Marxist, a socialist. These are ideologies that want our destruction. And these are the things that would fuel his decision-making. And so I do stand by that. But I want to draw our attention to this fact that our elections in the United States, are they safe? Or do we have non-citizens, people who weren't born here? They don't have citizenship. They don't have the legal right to cast a vote in our elections. Because if they do, they're taking away your vote and my vote, who do have a legal right to vote here. And when people from other countries, non-citizens, citizens of another country who are living in our country, either as illegal aliens or they've come over as with a visa, whether they're in our country legally or not, if they're voting in our elections, voting who our president is, voting who our senators are, voting who our congressmen are, if they're voting, we got trouble. We got problems. Well, is that happening? So I've done some research, and I want to share with you what I'm finding. Here recently, there was a congressional discussion on this. Congress had a hearing. The hearing happened May 16, 2024. And speaking on this subject as an expert witness was Hans Spakovsky, I think is how you say his name. Forgive me for getting that wrong. He served in the U.S. Department of Justice as a career civil service lawyer in the Civil Rights Division, where he received 3 meritorious service awards. He was promoted from a lawyer to being the counsel for the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, where he helped coordinate the enforcement of federal voting rights laws. He now serves as a senior legal fellow and manager of election law reform, representing the legal and judicial studies from the Heritage Foundation. Boy, a mouthful. So he was speaking as an expert to Congress on this very subject, and he began with these opening remarks. We know that aliens are registering and actually voting, although we do not know the extent of the problem, since the vast majority of states are not verifying the citizenship of registered voters. But then he goes on to quote some studies. One of the studies he referenced was a study done in 2014. And then there's another study I'll get into. But in that study in 2014, the findings of that study found that that official registration records revealed that thousands of non-citizens, of aliens, are registered in various jurisdictions, including Arizona, Illinois, Michigan, North Carolina, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and many, and he listed sanctuary cities. And as he gets into the study was published in the academic journal, Electoral Studies, published by the groundbreaking study, three scholars who estimated how frequently non-citizens were illegally voting. And they went back to the 2008 election between Obama and McCain and all the senators and of that election there. The study found that 1/4 of non-citizens in the U.S. were likely registered to vote. Now think about that, 1/4. So 1/4 of non-citizens in the U.S. were likely registered to vote. Wow, folks, right there. I mean, if that's all the data we had, we're in trouble. 1/4. Then the study went on. 6.5% of them actually voted. These non-citizens voted in the 2008 presidential election, and they found in their study that over 80% of them voted for Barack Obama in that election. So we had non-citizens, people who didn't even have the right to be on the register and the right to cast a vote did. And 80% of them that voted said they voted for Barack Obama. Illegal votes cast by non-citizens, the report came out, likely changed the important election outcomes in favor of the Democrats, including the Electoral College votes and pivotal U.S. Senate races. Wow. And these are the people that passed Obamacare. If they didn't get in, you wouldn't have had Obamacare passing. Then, of course, now this study has been attacked by critics and stuff, but a new study was done in 2022, and this was also revealed in this hearing. And the new study of 2022 affirms that the conclusions of the 2014 report were accurate. More recent data estimates that 10 to 27% of aliens, non-citizens, currently are registered to vote in America. and about 5 to 13% of them will illegally vote in the 2024 election. Wow. Now, we just shared with you information about Minnesota. I played for you some of the audio. They were celebrating over the fact that they're allowing everyone to have a driver's license. They passed the bill, driver's license for all. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't have to be here legally. We're going to give you a driver's license if you come and ask for one. And that it was revealed by the expert. I played for you part of that testimony there, Paul Linnell, the elections director, said if non-citizens present the election judge with an acceptable identification document, meaning the driver's license, that will clear the challenge from the roster and they would be permitted to cast a ballot. If our elections are not free and fair, we're losing the bedrock of our republic. That's the bedrock of our republic, is the free and fair elections. And our democratic process is being threatened. And what's interesting is that the party that's behind this is the Democratic Party. And yet they're the ones who are alleging that Trump is the threat to democracy when they themselves are the real threat to democracy. Folks, we have to be involved in making sure that we protect these rights and these freedoms. And if not, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose our country. Now, here's the thing. Christians for far too long have been uninvolved. We've been told, you stay out of politics. You don't have a right. You churches, you can't be doing any of this. I remember being in a meeting where George Barna had spoke, and I remember writing these things down in my notes, and I checked some of this material just to be sure that what I'm sharing with you is accurate, that I'm not making, that I'm fully sharing with you what's right, and you can have trust in what I'm sharing with you. This is confirmed by the Cultural Research Center, the CRC, and also Barna and stuff there. But roughly speaking, and of course these figures are little, I'm kind of rounding things to an even number. About 50% of church-going Christians in America, only 50% of them are registered to vote. You go into a church, about half of them are even bothered to register to vote. Then when it comes time to actually cast a vote, those who are registered, only 50% of them will turn out to actually cast the vote. That's horrifying. That is absolutely horrifying. We should be ashamed of ourselves. If you're not registered to vote, get with it, folks. We've got to make a difference. You don't say, well, my vote doesn't count. Well, it does. Barna, in October 2024, said this: about 5 million additional Christians would likely cast a vote if their pastor encouraged them. If their pastor encouraged them, they would likely do it. I went through the different elections going all the way back to Bush, and it turns out that the average to win an election in America, they win on average about 4.95 million votes. If we take all the elections all the way back to Bush and add them all together and then come out to an average, so about 5 million people can sway who the president will be. And if we got out there and voted, we could pick the president for every election. Wake up, folks. Let's take a stand. That's going to be it for today and the week. Join us again next week at the Corner of Truth and Courage. God bless you.